I'm pleased to say we're joined by the Chief Executive of the PDC, Matt Porter. Thanks for the time, Matt. How are you doing?
Anytime. Yeah, very well, Alex. Nice to see you again.
Well, usually we do these chats over the phone, whatever, so great to see you.
Special occasion.
It is a special occasion, and in Manchester, night 10 of the Premier League. We're over halfway now into the season. How would you assess how it's gone so far?
Look, I think it's been fascinating. You know, we've seen 5 different players win nights. Obviously, 2 players win 3 in a row, looking like they were going to dominate it. But then, obviously, Michael van Gerwen sort of struggled a little bit more in recent weeks. Peter's found it tough, you know, which is surprising, really, because his form in other events over the last couple of months has been pretty good. You know, Gezi's perhaps not found top gear yet either. But that's what the beauty of this format means, that there's still so much for them to play for week in, week out. So, you know, I'm looking forward to the next 6 weeks or so before we get to see who the final 4 are.
Well, this is the 20th year of the Premier League. It's been going for quite a while now.
Makes me feel old. I remember night 1 in Stoke.
Yeah, we used to have the Colchester Leisure Centre. That was a big venue back in the day. But Burton and I, we were discussing on the show recently what could be the next step in the evolution of the Premier League. And Burton was going an opening night in Paris, Rome, Vegas, be close to him. I was saying Belgium, Poland, some more European venues. For you, what do you see as the next move?
Look, I think it's certainly time to assess other countries that we could go into, and we are doing that. You have to remember, it's not just a case of saying where would be good. You know, the Premier League involves a lot of input from Sky, from sponsors, and it has to be in a territory and a venue that works for them as well, because ultimately someone's got to pay the bills. You know, so we can't pay the bills if we haven't got support either from fans or from commercial partners. So it's not just a case of saying, right, where would be fun, you know, because all those places you mentioned would be great fun, but they've got to work as well.
Well, we've got a couple of questions in. We haven't talked about him yet, so let's talk about him now. Luke Littler, it's been a manic last few months in the world of darts. What has it been like for the PDC? Because we've seen the interest in darts. It's just gone off the scale, hasn't it?
It has, and it's something that we obviously hadn't anticipated prior to the World Championship, because nobody would have thought he would have made the final and then turned the darts world upside down in the way that he has done. But I think it's something we've dealt with quite well. It's been a learning curve. It's been a lot of unforeseen things, a lot of surprising things. But Luke's taken it all in his stride. It's not affected his game. Nobody could say his game suffered as a result. I love this, just let him play darts. Well, we are. He's just playing darts, but he's also doing some interviews as well. It's fine. He doesn't just have to either lie in bed or play darts. He can do other things in his life, and he's doing them all really well. He's got lots of newfound friends in high places at Man United and in the media and places like that. But it's not fazed him at all. And good luck to him, because one thing you never know. Look, it's not like in football where someone says, "Oh, he's had a good season, so he'll go and sign a 5-year contract now, and that'll set him up for life." It doesn't work like that in darts. If he stops hitting as much as he's hitting, and his ranking plummets, and people stop asking him for interviews and stuff, things will change for him. So he's got to capitalise while make hay while the sun shines, as the phrase goes, and he's definitely doing that on and off the board. Good luck to him.
Definitely, and for you guys, you were obviously there, you were seeing it all unfold during the World Championship. At what point during those few weeks at Ali Pali did you think, wow, this is going to be a big change 2024 for us? Probably
the quarterfinals. Yeah, probably when he made it through to the last 8. And it's that, for us, the World Championship is split into 3 very definite parts. You've got the first round and the prelim before Christmas, or round 1 and round 2 as it is now, but last 96 and last 64 before Christmas. And that's very much a genre of its own, with the pre-Christmas atmosphere. You only see the top players once, then they disappear again for 10 days or longer, So that very much has its own feel to it. Then in that middle period, it's very intense. You go from having 32 players left to 8 players left in the blink of an eye, and people are playing every day. Complete contrast. And then you have a day's break, and everyone takes stock, and they start talking about who's going to win it. And then it's the real big boys who come back for the last 3 days, whether it's top of the rankings or top of the form tree. The guys who have come back from January the 1st onwards, they're hitting everything. They're confident. They want to be world champion. They're focused on being world champion. And it was at that point really when Luke made the last 8 that we start to feel that it wasn't just he's had a couple of good games. It was right, there might be something a little bit more here.
And one thing I was going to touch on as well, towards the end of that World Championship as well, there was a bit of talk online when we got to the final. Could we see the final on free-to-air television? Was that ever on the cards? Any discussion?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, it wasn't something we'd have been opposed to for obvious reasons, but in the same vein, you have to respect what Sky have done for darts and for the PDC, and they deserve that headline figure of 4 million viewers, whatever it was, because of the investment that they've made in the sport over the last 3 decades. So, I think it's easy for a broadcaster to say, "Oh yeah, well, give us the World Championship final." It's like, okay, well, where's your support for the rest of the year?
Yeah.
Where are you when we've got other tournaments that we want you to show? Because anyone can just say, "Oh yeah, sure, well, give me the best content."
Yeah.
And I think free to air is obviously important in the sporting world, but the way that the world is now, there aren't many people who don't have access to pay TV, either through their own subscriptions, through pubs, or perhaps through slightly more grey routes, which I won't talk into. But it's not like it was in the 90s or the early 2000s when there was only a very select or a small number of people who had pay subscriptions.
That's fair enough. Well, let's stick with Sky because they have been a long time partner for the PDC. You signed a 7-year deal with them at the end of 2017 up to 2025. Obviously, you mentioned the record viewing figures for the final. Is that a partnership you're looking to get that
absolutely
deal over?
Yeah, I mean, look, our deal with Sky is entering its final year, and they're, as I say, a long-term partner for us. They're an absolutely first-class partner for us, and we want that partnership to continue long into the next decade. So the conversations are beginning, and hopefully it'll be smooth, nice and smooth, and we can carry on moving forward together.
Well, let's get on to this season then. We're a few months in, and there was a big change, a lot of talk on social media about this as well, the European Tour qualifying criteria. We spoke with Ian White a few months ago, and he said, well, back in the day it did used to be the top 16, then it changed to the Pro Tour top 16, now it's both of them put together. How did it come about, that move?
I think we had to look at a number of factors. We had to look at the overall strength of the field. We had to look at the number of players that were in the event that were coming through one-off qualifying tournaments. We felt that was too high. We had to look at the number of opportunities that there were for or the number of rewards there were for players based on their rankings. One thing that's often said to us is that the main order of merit doesn't have enough clout in terms of enough events where you're rewarded for your position in the world order of merit, the main order of merit. So we wanted to look at that, and I think this hit the nail right on the head, and you've kind of alluded to it there with what you referenced with Ian White. If the current format now had been the format from day one, nobody would have batted an eyelid.
Yeah.
Everyone would have thought, yeah, that's pretty logical, 3 lots of 16, and it makes sense. But that doesn't mean that just because that we were in a different place. We as you know, and anyone who follows the darts will know, we will always change things if we think it will make things better. And I think it would take somebody very, very one-eyed to turn around and say that the first 2 tournaments of this year have been any worse than anything you'd have seen before. The standard, I wasn't able to watch the whole of the Easter weekend, but I was getting the scores through, and the averages were a joke. The crowds were fantastic. The European Tour is in a strong place, and this format, this qualification criteria, I think makes it stronger.
One more on the Euro Tour as well. We have got a new destination this year. We're going to Switzerland for the first time. We speak with everyone. We spoke to one of the co-founders of the SDC a few years ago when they'd just started, and obviously to get an event in Switzerland is big for them. What's the interest like for that event? So
strong. Particularly in the German part of Switzerland. French-speaking Europe, whether it be Belgium, Switzerland or France, is only just starting to emerge. So you have to walk before you can run. But clearly in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, particularly the demand is huge.
And the UK Open, also in the books for this year. I made my unsuccessful return to the Riley's qualifiers. You didn't see me in Minehead, so that tells you how well I got.
I was looking out for you on board 7, Alex.
Well, I got to the first round, so I've done all right. But, the qualifiers next year, any news on if they're going to...
No, it's a bit early. We're always looking to assess that, and see what the right way to go with that is. We're mindful that it's important that the conditions at the qualifiers are as good as they can be, and we have to keep an eye on whether that's always the case. So Riley's again have been a good partner of ours over many years and have produced some fine players. You know, you can name plenty of top players who've come through Riley's qualifiers, and increasingly now more and more are doing so. You know, I think one thing that's certainly changed over the last decade is that the amateur qualifiers for the UK Open are not really unknown players anymore. Yeah. You know, they're now players from the Challenge Tour or from the WDF circuit, or players who play in Motor Super Series or whatever, but they're not really just people off the street as they maybe were 10 years ago. So we have to see how that's changed things, and and look at if what we're doing at the moment is the right thing or not.
Fair enough. I think that's why I didn't win the qualifier.
Probably.
I'm an unknown player.
Draw was fixed, I reckon.
As well, yeah. But a story which we've got to talk about as well, it's attracted a lot of attention, is Noah Lynn van Leuven winning the Challenge Tour, the Women's Series as well. Yeah. First trans woman to play in the Women's World Match Play last year. Meets all the rules that the PDC follow, but we still get the negative comments online. The PDC, you've even had to mute the comments on social media. Is that something that you're monitoring at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very sensitive issue, and clearly it's not just darts that's being affected, and we have to be very conscious of Noah Lynn's personal situation in terms of her own mental health, and frankly the level of abuse that she was receiving from some quarters is just unacceptable, and there's no grounds whatsoever for anybody to be voicing their opinions in such offensive ways. So whether it was right or not to mute the comments is something we're reviewing, something that we're taking advice from people who are perhaps operating in that space more regularly than we are. But it was a decision we took at the time, and one we supported. But essentially for us, look, the PDC has always been about inclusion and openness. Contrary to what some people who are perhaps newer to darts think, it's not like we have men's events. We have some women's events, clearly, but we don't really have men's events. In fact, we don't have men's events at all. So when I read headlines about how Noah Lynn had won a women's event and a men's event in the same week from a national newspaper, it's just an absolute disgrace. Yeah. It's an absolute disgrace. And I've said elsewhere about the standard of clickbait on darts since the World Championship, whether it's Luke Littler, Noah Lynn, Michael Van Gerwen, Luke Humphries, whoever they're talking about, is disgusting. And there's a lot of people out there who are calling themselves journalists who really need to start looking at themselves on that basis, particularly when they're writing for well-established titles. Now, I'm not talking about, for clarity, the people who cover darts week in and week out. They understand the sport, they know the sport, they respect the sport, and they write high quality material. But a lot of people who have decided to capitalise on darts' newfound position in society and just churn out stuff that is often offensive, almost always inaccurate and misleading. It's really not good enough. As I say, if somebody just starts up their own website and churns out any old rubbish, you can expect that. But when it's a major national newspaper, that's just not good enough.
Can't argue with that. And one more question before we finish up with a few from our listeners. Sad news as well in the last few weeks. Dick Alex, one of the PDC's co-founders, passing away. Again, we had the pleasure of chatting to him for our Darts Legends series because of what he did for the game as well. I know you said he was a great help for you over the years. So how is he going to be remembered?
Yeah, Dick is someone who we'll really miss. He'd obviously been retired for a few years, but he was a Hall of Famer. He was always popping in and staying on the phone. He represented a few of the sort of commentators and reporters and stuff. So we were still in regular contact. And he was one of the pioneers. He was one of the people who took the PDC, or founded the PDC, but then took it from halls to arenas, took it across borders into new countries, and he had a vision, and he was very capable. He did a lot of the nuts and bolts work. You maybe wouldn't have seen him in front of camera or banging his fist on the table, but people behind the scenes have to make it work for those who are going to go and put their head above the parapet, and he was definitely one of those people. So it was a big shame. He was a good age, Dick, but it would have been nice if he'd have had a little bit longer, and it's we're sorry to have lost him.
We'll finish up just with some listener questions before we let you go. Poison Ivy Darts, do you see a future where dart players will have coaches in a similar role to golfers or other sportsmen?
It's interesting because we're quite conscious of the fact that darts is one of the only professional sports where there isn't really a coaching system. it is essentially quite basic. You hit or you miss, and whether you do that with your eyes open or your eyes closed, or your hand high or your hand low or whatever, it's kind of up to you, isn't it? Exactly. Yeah. It's whatever works. I mean, if you look at the top 10 players now, or the top 10 players in history, they've all got different throwing styles, and they all work for them at some certain times and don't at other times. Clearly, there are some basics that you can be taught, and I think that you're seeing that now in the academies, the JDC academies. That's where the sort of first generation of coaches, if you like, are coming through. But then you've got people like Wayne Mardle and Glenn Durrant, people who've been at the top level of the game, who are offering their expertise in a one-to-one environment as well. So I don't think it's ever going to be like maybe like a tennis player and coach relationship, but I think what you'll have are people who players turn to just for little hints and tips and bits of tweaking, or maybe studying video analysis of players should watch their own throw. If you're an amateur, buy a tripod on Amazon for $5 and stick your phone camera and whichever board you practice on, just film yourself and watch. Does your body stay in the same position? Is your head in the same position? Is your movement the same? Are you doing the same thing time after time? Because it's really easy with darts to assume something, but you need that evidence to back it up. And I think pros certainly should be doing it. Watching when their form falls away, watching videos back of themselves to see what's changed. So, as I say, I don't think you'll have a day-to-day coaching like you may be doing other sports, but I do think it will become more frequent that people have someone to turn to.
Some good advice there. And Richard, he's Irish based. He says if the PDC can't get the World Grand Prix back to Ireland, would you consider another TV event, maybe an Irish Masters World Series or a Euro?
To be honest, it's not about the World Grand Prix, it's about the venues. We are, and I say this in every single interview I do with darts media, we are really trying to find a venue in Ireland, and there really aren't any. We looked at one and it's being closed and then refurbished and reopened and blah blah blah, and obviously we've lost the City West, and the 3 Arena is great for a Premier League show, but it's way too big for a run-of-the-mill show, so it's tough. But we are, and I don't want to keep sounding like a stuck record, but we are desperate to bring an event back to Ireland.
Alright, the next one is asking about Canada as well. Could we have a Canadian stop on the World Series, similar to grouping the New Zealand and Australia?
Yeah, hopefully. We're not in a strong position with broadcasters in Canada at the moment, and that's a fundamental part of a World Series event, that we can get it showcased to a domestic audience. The World Series isn't really about fans who watch the darts week in, week out. It's about taking it to new audiences, So if we can't get a broadcaster in Canada that's going to be showing the darts week in, week out, it's unlikely. But we know from a player perspective and from a fan perspective that there is demand there. So hopefully we can change the broadcast position. We're trying very hard and get something off the ground.
And Henrik wants to know, it's a player question, he's been a big part of the PDC over the years. Adrian Lewis, he was at the Night of Champions last year. He's not played for a long time on the tour. Any news of him coming back?
No, not that we know of. We saw Adrian at the UK Open. He went down and did a little bit of hosting work for the venue. He's in good spirits, he's in good shape, but he's got his own issues to deal with at the moment. So we're not putting him under any pressure. He knows we've contacted him. The PDPA have contacted him a number of times. He knows where we are. We're there to help him and support him, and we'd love to see him back, but he's got to make that decision himself. And
the last two, probably the two most important ones actually. George Dobson, what would Matt's darts nickname and walk-on song be?
Oh, great question. Do you know what? That's probably the first time I've ever been asked that. I might have to hold the answer back, and I'll message you when I think of the answer and you can put it out. I don't know, my nickname, I'm 6'6", so you could probably come up with a nickname about my height, Shorty or something like that, but yeah, walk on tune, I don't know. I'll come up with something that people can abuse me for.
What do Leighton Orient walk out to?
We walk out to a 1950s jazz tune called Tijuana Taxi by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. If I played that at the darts, it would kill the event immediately. Right. There is no chance of it being that. Maybe London Calling by the Clash.
Nice,
yeah, I'm going to go with that. London Calling by the Clash.
All right, we'll take the nickname to the media and
see what we come
up with. And lastly, Concord Darts. Screw all these boring questions. Here's a real one: bacon sandwich, red or brown sauce?
Oh, I'm easy either way. Probably going to go brown, but I'm totally fine with red as well. So both together.
Happy days. Good place to finish it, Matt.
Good stuff. Always fun. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks very much for your time, and all the best for the rest of the year.
And thanks to all your listeners for the support as well. Much appreciated.